In 2009, a startling archaeological find was made in England. A mass grave containing headless skeletons dating back to Roman times. Who were these decapitated men, and what grim fate befell them centuries ago? This is just one of the eerie artifacts that have recently emerged from obscurity to raise chilling questions about our past. Lying undiscovered for generations, these baffling relics provide glimpses into antiquity's darkest chapters. Take, for example, the gigantic three-toed claw found mummified in a New Zealand cave. This frightful appendage belonged to a massive prehistoric bird, perfectly preserved for over 3,000 years. From ancient child sacrifices to medieval tumors flawlessly embalmed by time, these unearthed curiosities are transforming our understanding of bygone eras. As archaeology continues to uncover history's most bizarre discoveries, experts have only just scratched the surface of obscure artifacts still buried in obscurity. Join us as we voyage into the shadowy depths of the past, bringing to light the creepy relics and unsolved mysteries that linger in the dusty archives of archaeology. 17. Mass animal grave. One of the more disturbing finds on this list is the mass animal grave uncovered in Idaho in 1971. While digging in a cornfield, paleontologists came across a macabre sight, a huge grave containing the remains of over 200 animals. This mass burial site was once a waterhole where the animals congregated, but tragedy struck when a deep layer of volcanic ash rained down, suffocating the creatures and entombing them. Over a dozen species were identified within the fossilized remains, with rhinos being the most common. The animals were frozen in time, killed suddenly by the falling ash, and preserved where they died. This fossil trove gave researchers an unprecedented look into the extinct fauna of the region 12 million years ago. Dubbed the Ashfall Fossil Beds, this important paleontological site is now protected as a state historic park. But the origins of the mass grave remain disturbing, a sobering reminder of nature's indifference. 16. Mass baby grave. In late 1900s, one of the most chilling archaeological finds is the mass baby grave uncovered in Ashkelon, Israel. When excavating this ancient seaport in the south of Israel, archaeologists made a grim discovery: over 100 tiny skeletons buried in the sands. Dating back to the Roman era between 1 BCE and 300 CE, DNA analysis revealed the infants were all less than a year old when they died. The method of death remains unknown, but their discarded bodies point to a disturbing possibility that these babies were systematically killed soon after birth. Packed together in the earth, the sight provokes horror and revulsion even centuries later. With no signs of sickness, accident, or care shown in burial, many believe this mass grave represents ancient infanticide. But the motivations behind such an act are still shrouded in mystery. Who were these infants, and why were their little lives cut tragically short? This haunting archaeological site serves as a reminder of the barbaric practices once tolerated by societies of the past. 15. Vampire graves. In the town of Kaldus, Poland, archaeologists found 14 unusual graves in a medieval cemetery. The people buried in these graves were thought to be vampires by the townspeople long ago. During medieval times, many people believed vampires were real. They thought vampires were dead people who would rise from their graves to hurt the living. People were very scared of this happening. To stop a dead person from becoming a vampire, people would take special steps when burying them. Some would cut off the head before burial. Others would turn the body face down in the grave instead of on its back. Some would weigh the body down with heavy stones on top of the grave. The archaeologists found graves with vampires buried in all these ways. Some had no head, some were face down, some had big rocks piled on top. The townspeople did these things long ago because they thought it would prevent the dead from rising like vampires. 14. Hobbit skeletons. In 2003, a team of archaeologists made a startling discovery on the remote Indonesian island of Flores. Skeletons belonging to a strange new species of human, nicknamed the Hobbit. These tiny humans stood just 3 feet tall as adults. Their bones were initially thought to belong to modern humans with a disorder causing small size. However, later discoveries revealed the Hobbit skeletons were not just freakishly small humans. They were an entirely new species in the human family tree, now known as Homo floresiensis. Their tiny stature, small brains, and mix of ancient and advanced features suggest the hobbits branched off from other humans extremely early in our evolution. living until just 50,000 years ago. The Hobbits are an example of recent human evolution's wonderful creativity. Island life seems to have drastically shrunk these humans as they adapted over thousands of generations. Discovering a new human species so recently in our past opens up questions about how life found a way to evolve modern humans, Neanderthals, hobbits, and more. The Hobbit skeletons prove there is still so much we don't know about the twists and turns of human evolution. 13. Headless Vikings. In 2009, archaeologists uncovered a horrific Viking mass grave dating to around 1000 AD in the quiet seaside town of Weymouth, England. Within the circular pit lay the remains of 54 young Viking men, all ruthlessly executed by beheading. Their heads were shoveled into piles, cast haphazardly atop their headless bodies. Trauma analysis indicates these muscular men were strong, battle-hardened warriors who met a brutal end. Based on their unity in death, researchers believe they served and died together as comrades, likely executed for treason by their chieftain. Burn marks suggest final death blows by fire. This chilling sight provides an unearthed window into the violent nature of Viking justice and power struggles of medieval times. 12. Jigsaw skeletons. In 2001, on Scotland's remote Outer Hebrides Islands, 4 bizarre mummified bodies were discovered deliberately pieced together from bones of different corpses. Dating back 4,000 years to Britain's mysterious Neolithic period, these jigsaw mummies were a shocking archaeological find. Male and female bones, adult and child, were selectively assembled and entwined to form fragmented fake people. Mummified flesh and plant weaving shrouded this cunning remodeling. Extensive mixing across age, gender, and health status concealed identities, perhaps energizing the dead or celebrating communal ancestry. CT scans have unraveled each skeleton's anatomical anomalies and enigmatic origins. What beliefs or rituals inspired Neolithic people to craft composite corpses remains an eerie enigma. 11. Site of mass cannibal attack. In 1994, forensics unearthed a 49,000-year-old scene of horror deep within El Cedron Cave in northern Spain. There lay a grisly graveyard of butchered bones belonging to 12 Neanderthals, men, women, and children who once lived together in the cave. Blunt force trauma on skulls and human tooth marks on arm bones revealed they were hunted, smashed, eaten, and tossed away by another cannibalistic Neanderthal group. DNA showed this was an extended family horribly massacred and devoured by their own kind in an ancient act of prehistoric war or retribution. What exactly sparked this cave-dwelling clan's descent into cannibalistic barbarity can only be speculated, but the evidence indelibly documents Neanderthals' capacity for both community and cruelty. 10. Frozen child sacrifice mummies. In 1999, atop Argentina's Lulayaco volcano, an Incan burial ground was discovered, where 3 children were tragically sacrificed in 1500 AD. The frozen mummies of a 4-year-old boy and 2 girls of 6 and 15 years old were found entombed together near ancient shrines. CT scans perfected their eternal death poses, calmly cross-legged, as if falling into a forever sleep. Gorgeously dressed in vivid red, blue, and green caps and miniature gold statues buried alongside, these children likely went willing to their fates. Chemical analysis shows their diets shifted to solely maize and coca leading up to their deadly pilgrimage. This ritual, known as Capicosha, was likely meant to halt impending disasters or represent the bounds of the Incan Empire. Their discovery reveals the reverence, violence, and grief surrounding ancient offerings made to placate the gods. 9. Severed human feet. One of the most bizarre ongoing mysteries is the appearance of dismembered human feet on the shores of British Columbia, Canada. Starting in 2007, severed feet enclosed in running shoes have washed up on beaches from Vancouver Island to Botanical Beach. To date, at least 16 feet have been found with no explanation for their gruesome dismemberment. Theories abound, including murder, human trafficking, plane crashes, and tsunami victims. But only a handful of feet have been identified and linked to people known to be missing or deceased. For the rest, their origin and reason for disjointed arrival remains murky. Even more perplexing is why just the feet, and almost exclusively right feet, have turned up over the years. These disconnected human remnants stir up public imagination and fears of unseen horror. Their discovery provokes unease about what still lurks below the waters and clouds of the Pacific Northwest shoreline. Each shoe-clad foot carries mysteries that may never fully wash ashore, their detached limbs lingering in public awareness, haunting the consciousness of local communities. 8. War Trophy Grave. Here is an expanded description of the War Trophy grave discovery. In 2015, archaeologists uncovered a dark relic of ancient violence in Bergheim, France, a Neolithic mass grave with dismembered skeletons. Dug 5,000 years ago, this circular ditch contained the remains of 7 people, 2 adult men, 1 woman, and 4 children. Anthropological study revealed they were villagers who suffered a horrific attack. The attackers viciously killed the adults, broke their limbs to access marrow, and severed their arms as gruesome war trophies. The children were also brutally murdered. DNA showed they were one family, with the woman being both mother and daughter of the others. Finding an entire family brutally slain and dismembered in antiquity reveals striking human similarities between then and now. Acts of violence echoing down the ages. While the buried truth of their demise disappeared over time, this grave immortalizes the savage raid that claimed their lives and limbs so long ago. A hardened echo of our ancient capacity for cruelty. 7. Calcified ovarian teratoma. In 1959, archaeologist Michel Fleury made a startling discovery when examining a 1600-year-old woman's skeleton unearthed in the Basilica of Saint-Denis in Paris. Among the remains of this adult female, buried centuries ago, Fleury uncovered a gruesome tumor nestled in her pelvis. Upon closer inspection, the grapefruit-sized growth was revealed to be a calcified ovarian teratoma, an extremely rare tumor that arises from a woman's germ cells. Teratomas contain chaotic tissues like hair, teeth, bones, and even complex organs. This woman's tumor had hardened over time into a misshapen mass in her abdomen. Fleury also found a copper belt buried alongside the body, which likely caused the accidental mummification of growth by oxidizing the surrounding environment. Pathological analysis indicates the anonymous woman likely suffered from this benign but bizarre condition for years before finally succumbing to death. While tumors and reproductive curiosities have arisen throughout history, finding such a well-preserved specimen allows researchers a window into antiquity's medical mysteries and marvels. 6. Snake Pit. In 2009, the Sessions family got more than they bargained for when they purchased a home in Rexburg, Idaho. Shortly after moving into the house, they discovered a horrifying reality. Their new home was infested with thousands of snakes. Ben and Amber Sessions and their children found garter snakes everywhere, crawling out from beneath sinks, slithering through pipes, nestled inside walls and closets. The source was soon determined to be a hibernaculum, or winter haven, for the reptiles located right below the house's foundation. Built atop this natural snake sanctuary, the home inadvertently became a nightmarish pit of snakes when the cold-blooded tenants awoke from hibernation. Despite repeated removal efforts, the snakes persisted, driven indoors to escape the cold. With young children, the family had to hastily abandon the home for both safety and sanity. The story spread quickly, fueling public fascination and fears. To this day, the abandoned snake house remains a controversial local landmark, serving as a skin-crawling reminder of nature reclaiming its own space in our midst. 5. Fetus inside coffin of mummified bishop. In Lund University, Sweden, researchers encountered a grim surprise when examining a long-dead bishop. Using CT scans on the mummified medieval bishop, they noticed an anomalous mass tucked away at his feet. Further investigation revealed this lump was actually the remains of a tiny fetus, hidden for centuries beneath the clergyman's robes. Dating to the 1600s, the bishop was a prominent Scandinavian religious leader in life. But the story of this stowaway infant in death remains a mystery. One theory suggests the fetus was a relative of the bishop, perhaps a grandchild placed in his coffin rather than buried alone on unconsecrated ground. Another posits the fetus may have been an illegitimate child, covertly laid to rest with the bishop by a grieving mother or father, unable to grant it a proper burial. The reasons underlying this furtive fetal internment can only be speculated, but But the strange mingling of birth and death in one coffin offers macabre insights into the social mores and discomforts surrounding pregnancy loss and stillbirths in bygone eras. 4. Decapitated gladiators. In 2005, archaeologists in York, England, uncovered a Roman-era mass grave with a mysterious past. Inside laid a group of young, robust men, all ruthlessly executed in antiquity by decapitation, dating back to 400 AD. Analysis showed these men were unusually tall and muscular for the period, bearing battle wounds and evidence of weapons training since childhood. Based on their brawn, the researchers theorized these men were gladiators who fought for spectacle in York's Roman amphitheaters, cut off in the primes of their lives between age 25-35. They may have been killed as punishment for failed rebellions or revolts. Their shared grave reflects a united front in both life and death. One violent stroke ended them, but could not erase the bond of brothers in arms. This macabre discovery helps resurrect the often brutal world of Roman gladiators who served as both champions and slaves. It immortalizes a band of ancient fighters felled together by forces more powerful than themselves. Even beheaded, their brotherhood and bravery echo still. 3. Hanged tenant. In 2013, a disturbing scene awaited the new owner of a Paris apartment. Upon taking possession of the property, he was met with the decomposed remains of the previous tenant, who had hanged himself in the apartment 8 years prior. The deceased was a middle-aged Cambodian immigrant named Thomas Nguyen, who had moved to Paris years earlier. After losing his factory job and accruing insurmountable debts, Nguyen tragically took his own life out of desperation. With no relatives in the country, his suicide went undetected for almost a decade as automatic rent payments continued. Nguyen's lonely death and belated discovery rattled the neighborhood and made headlines, sparking concerns about isolation and the social safety net. It revealed a heartbreaking downfall hidden in plain view as economic woes overshadowed one man's silent suffering. While Nguyen escaped his struggles the only way he saw possible, his tragic end in the apartment immortalized the hardship faced by many striving immigrants and low-income individuals just struggling to survive. 2. Mummified lung. In 1959, French archaeologist Michel Fleury made a startling discovery while excavating the labyrinth of crypts below the Basilica of Saint-Denis in Paris. This ornate cathedral had served as the traditional burial site for the kings of France since the 7th century AD, housing the tombs of over 70 monarchs and their royal consorts. When Fleury opened a centuries-old sarcophagus buried deep in the crypts, he uncovered something extraordinary: a full human skeleton accompanied by a creepily well-preserved lung, mummified by time. Alongside the skeleton and lung were strands of brittle brown hair, scraps of deteriorated 6th century Merovingian textiles woven from plant fibers and leather, and a heavily oxidized copper belt wrapped around the waist. Experts from the Center of Research and Restoration of the Museums of France analyzed the artifacts, determining the lung tissue had undergone spontaneous mummification from a chemical reaction with the oxidized copper belt buried in direct contact. This belt had likely been an ornamental funeral item made of over 90% copper. The macabre, mummified lung conjured images of ancient religious beliefs about carrying bodies and organs intact into the afterlife. After carbon dating the skeleton, Fleury could confirm the remains belonged to a male peasant from the late 6th century AD. The intrigue of this archaeological find below the streets of Paris shines a light on the eerie funerary rituals of French royalty over 1400 years ago. The well-traveled crypts of Saint-Denis continue to reveal surprises today. 1. Moa bird foot. In 1987, a shocking paleontological find was made in the depths of a New Zealand cave. A group of archaeologists were undertaking a routine expedition in the Mount Owen cave system on New Zealand's South Island. Deep within the sprawling caverns, they stumbled across something truly remarkable: a gigantic, three-toed foot, perfectly intact with leathery flesh still clinging to the bones. At over 12 inches long, the foot was unmistakably gigantic, evoking images of a massive dinosaur or other prehistoric megafauna. Given the incredible state of preservation, with scaly skin still enveloping the foot, the researchers hypothesized this frightful-looking claw must have belonged to an animal that perished only recently. However, upon carbon dating and further analysis, it was determined the foot had been mummified over 3,300 years earlier. The foot belonged to an enormous bird species thought to have gone extinct, the moai. These ostrich-like giants stood over 10 feet tall and weighed 500 pounds. With few natural predators, moa proliferation caused them to become the dominant herbivores in New Zealand's forest ecosystems. That was until the arrival of humans and the MOA's subsequent extinction in the 15th century CE.